like to call the meeting to order, please. If we could have the roll call.
Mr. Alker.
Here.
Dr. Stampa. Mrs. Flanagan. Dr. Duvall.
Here.
Mr. Gravely.
Here.
Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. Zayer.
Here. If we could have a motion to approve our agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. DeVault, seconded by Mr. Alker to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's 5-0 with 2 members absent. I'd like to welcome all our visitors this morning, some of our special guests that are being recognized. At this time, we'll ask Mr. Gravely to give us the invocation. Mr. Martin, if you'd lead us in the pledge, please.
Oh, wise and heavenly Father, as we bow in humble submission, we want to thank you for life, health, and strength. Father God, we ask that you bless this meeting this morning, bless the decisions that will be made in this meeting for the uplifting of our school community, our teachers, our staff, our students, everyone that's involved in this process, Father God. So we ask all these things in thy Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no public comment today. At this time, we'll ask Mrs. Hatchett to lead us in our awards and recognition part.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As you know, each year the Virginia School Boards Association offers us the opportunity to recognize businesses in our community who have made a meaningful impact on the education of our students. And today, I have 3 resolutions for you to vote on. I'm going to read one of them because they are duplications of one another, but then we need to vote on all 3 as a group. And the resolution says, whereas public schools and local businesses are an integral part of this community, and whereas many local businesses play a crucial role in supporting our schools, and whereas the economic health of our community, state, and nation depends on a strong public school system, and whereas collaboration between local public schools and local businesses strengthens schools and the business community alike by providing a well-trained and highly educated workforce, and whereas an excellent public school system is vital to the quality of life in this community and fundamental to preserving a strong democratic society now and in the future, now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Henry County names Lowe's, McKinney Heating and Air, and Uptown Pinball to the 2019 Virginia School Board Association Business Honor Roll, showing appreciation for the firm's ongoing support of this community's public schools. Your work has aided the community in focusing on the goal of providing the best public schools we can for every child who attends them. And this year we've nominated these particular businesses because, as you know, we've worked with Lowe's in the past to do projects at our schools. This year, their project for the fall was to create cabinet space in the new horticulture lab at Bassett High School. So Megan Wells' program that is new in that building has now excellent storage, beautifully crafted with all of the supplies donated by Lowe's, put together with our maintenance department, and they all came together on this particular day and installed those. So that has been a real game changer for that particular program. As you know, you've heard from our Career Academy students and staff that McKinney Heating and Air has provided support both in instruction but also in materials for Mr. Bird's class, and Uptown Pinball has also been an excellent partnership for that same class. So I'd like to ask you to please consider these resolutions and honor these very important businesses who've been great partners for us.
Can we make this all in one motion, Mrs. Ashwell?
Yes.
Okay, we need a motion to approve these 3 resolutions.
Motion to adopt the resolutions as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gravely to approve all 3 resolutions. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. We are going to ask the whole board to be in the picture. So this time we'll take the picture, and then afterwards, if you'd like to make a comment to the board, we'd be pleased for you to do so.
I'd like to ask Mr. Minner and Mr. Byrd to also join our guests in the photo as well. And we have a certificate and a copy of the resolution for each of you. My name is going to represent Lowe's, and he's going to stand up on the stage. We have Mr. McKinney from the and Mr. Haley from the council.
I need to get his back, so I'm gonna put the good-looking fellows up front.
We do want to put our honorees in the middle. We can do that.
You're hiding. Mr. Arthur's hiding back here.
Mrs. Stern. She's trying to hide. We don't want her to hide either.
No, I'm good.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, shortcut.
Just looks tight.
As a local business owner, and one of the hardest aspects you have, whether you're here or anybody, is finding gainful employment and competent employment. And to see the investments that the county has made at the career development over in Vicksburg is really nice. Wonderful facility. It's easy to see that the foundation is there and the leadership is there to really build it into something that the community can be proud of and can be very powerful for businesses going forward. So thank you for making that commitment to trades, and really nice to see. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to second most of what he just said, but, I'm in need of techs, so they're creating them, and that's good. It's full circle. He finds them, they fix them, I buy them, they come in and play. It's a never-ending circle. Everybody's having a good time, still an incredibly safe environment for everybody. Uptown Pinball had a record month last month. Last week alone, I saw over 900 people. And these kids will come in and see their handiwork that they've created and done, thanks to Mr. Byrd's tutelage. And my hat is off to you, sir. I salute you. Keep up the good work. And we will build, as I say, a better mousetrap. It just continues to help the community, to help everybody. I never had any idea that this would grow into what it's growing into. I've expanded 6 times. I'm still expanding. I'm out of room now. And 2020 probably have to do something entirely different. We'll have to wait and see. But with the help of the Career Academy and the insightfulness of what they've got and what they're doing, it takes me back to Franklin County years ago with the, what was it, FFA, Future Farmers of America, and they would do things and actually teach people. So that's pretty good. And if they keep doing this, then you can't do anything but win. What do you think? Think so? Think so? That's right. Thank you again for the honor. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just say a little bit, kind of going on with growing the students as well. With Lowe's Heroes program, we've been able to do a lot with the community in the last few years. I've been fortunate to be the manager in this community for 14 years now. Moved 2 years everywhere before that, 23 years, moved all around. I've been fortunate to be here and do a lot of things in the community, and it gets more fulfilling every time. We worked with Monica several times now, and this time it seemed that we really got a lot out of the teacher. Was very, very, I don't remember her name, I'm sorry. Miss Wells. Yeah, she was very appreciative of wanting to give her students a better classroom. So what we did with the maintenance department, did an excellent job with their craftsmanship, was top notch anywhere you'd ever find. I couldn't believe how they did it, such a great job. Where we provided all the materials, they built it, we helped install it, but they did an excellent job. And I hadn't seen, all teachers are very grateful for what they get these days, but she was extremely grateful for her students. So I hadn't seen, and that made it very worthwhile for us, because it'll, just like the other two gentlemen said, that we're trying to train the youth where it's getting harder and harder to find good employees. And, they come up through the horticultural program and maybe work in my garden center one day. So that'll, and we have a lot of students that have done that through Magna Vista, so this will help out, with the other schools as well. So thank you all for the work.
Thank you. Okay, the next part of our agenda is the informational part of it. Mrs. Strayer.
Actually, Mrs. Milner is going to make the first part
Okay.
of this presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Today I would like to share with you our plans for students in our advanced placement courses. Years ago, we administered the AP exam to all students who were enrolled in an AP course. Due to the decline of our socioeconomic status of many of our students, the test was then made optional. In 2010, Henry County Public Schools received the VAST grant, and that provided funding for students to take the exam and also offer incentives for the students as well as the teachers. And during this time, more students did make qualifying scores on those exams. However, after the grant went away, there was a decrease in the amount of students that were able to take the exam because they couldn't afford it. We do know that rigor is involved with these classes, and we want to take away all the obstacles that students may have, and cost being one of them. We now have the ability to take away that obstacle through our Title IV federal grant funding. During our transition of making this requirement for students to take this exam, we would like to make sure that all students, teachers, guidance counselors, administrators, and parents are aware of this requirement. Our teachers will take advantage of AP training during the summer, and this will offer them an additional professional development opportunity. And in addition to, if they can't attend during the summer, we do have individuals from the College Board that are able to come and provide professional development for them during the year to support them. We need to educate our parents as well as our students in the fact that when you take college courses, the work is more rigorous and there is more homework. If parents do opt out of taking their child taking this exam, then we do realize that we would remove the AP designation and they would receive the DE designation on their transcript. That's one thing that we had talked about. With that being said, do you have any questions?
As far as the AP classes, assume, you said the teachers going through the training. Teachers have to have their masters in order to teach their course still, right, or what?
Yeah, and so for dual enrollment through the community college, they have to have their master's in 18 hours in the specific content they're teaching. If not, they're not considered credentialed by the college, but they'll still let someone teach it. It's just that they have an adjunct assigned with them. As far as AP is totally different and you're just approved by College Board. So in the past, there's been people that would not be credentialed by the community college that could be credentialed through College Board. So we have been focused on having the DE credentialed person teaching the course because that's saving us money.
Do we have conflicts between students or parent groups between dual enrollment and AP, which direction kids go, and how is that dealt with and resolved? And probably can't be resolved, but how is it dealt with?
Well, right now the courses are combined, and they must meet the requirement of passing meeting the BPT requirements to be in the class. We do know that with the dual enrollment courses, once they receive that credential, there are some situations in which, when we look at those courses transferring out and so forth, so that may come into place. They, whether it's transferred out as a core credit, and Ms. Strayer, you can speak to this as well, or whether it is an elective credit, kind of to say.
Yeah.
That's been the biggest problem, and one of the things we've talked about for years in the high school since we started, as Lisa said, we started off originally with just AP, then we went to just dual enrollment, and then there was an integration of the two. And part of the problem is the number of students that we have in our high schools is so small that when we divide students up into multiple choices, sometimes we deplete a choice, and that's why they were put together, because at one point we did have separate AP, separate dual enrollment, but you had class sizes so small they had to be collapsed. So that's why they ended up being put together again. So, numbers of the game that we play now. And every year we'll have an AP course that might not make at one school. Like we already know at Bassett High School next year that AP Physics will make. It's not a dual enrollment class, it's strictly AP. And so AP will make at Bassett, but it's not gonna make at Magna Vista. So we wanna give students, we wanna work a lot this summer on restructuring high school, and maybe it won't be for next year, but the year after, because we want students to have choices. And we want, if a student wants to be in physics at Magna Vista, but there's only 3 kids that want it, we want to offer it online, obviously, but we want to have other options for children who are interested. So that's the battle we're facing right now, is the low number interested in just AP.
And we did go to each of the high schools and share this information with the guidance counselors as well as the AP teachers. And I think one of the biggest things that they mentioned was just making sure that they receive the training and the support, and to know that, this is not something that would go, pressure would be put on them, I guess, from the very beginning. We do know that it's a transition period, and that we will provide them with the support.
And the other number one thing they asked for was a year-long schedule. And about 5 years ago, we had a committee that talked about whether we need to move away from the block schedule and go to a year-round schedule. And that has come up from all these teachers that are begging for a year-round. But we have said, again, that will take all of us to look into to see what are the pros and cons of changing our schedule. So that would not be an overnight decision. That would be a year-long process involving you all.
So in AP, the instruction that students get in classroom would be the same whether they're doing dual enrollment or AP. They're together. And then they opt as to which direction they want to go, or whether they want to take the test.
Well, we
or not.
want to encourage all of them to take the test,
Yeah.
because, they do have that option.
Yeah.
We want to encourage them to take the test.
When did the previous grant funding end?
It was a 4-year grant. It started in 2010. And it had lots of benefits for the students, and that's why they were willing to take it. So we hope that this money from this grant will do the same thing. It will encourage the kids to want to take the test, because there's no cost obstacle, like we said.
So your recommendation is to strongly encourage everybody to take the AP exam next year?
And I will say that was in the program of studies in 2010 through 2014. It was in the program of studies that if you didn't take the exam, it was removed from your transcript, and it would just read that you had dual enrollment government instead of AP government. So now your transcript says AP/DE government. And we took that out of the program of studies when we weren't paying for the exam anymore, because we felt it wasn't fair to penalize the children for not being able to pay. So that will go back in the program of studies, that statement of if you don't take the test, the designation will be removed, as Ms. Miller stated.
And I know that some of the agencies are publicity disseminated when high schools are rated nationwide. And one of the rating scales involves a number of students taking AP courses. So we want students to take them, not just because we get ratings for that, but because it prepares them, for the rigor if they plan to go on to college, I think.
Absolutely. I think that test was the most beneficial thing that, when I was in high school, that made a difference. And we all in the instruction department firmly believe that we need our students taking that AP test. And we also know with economic development that when businesses move here, one of the first things they ask EDC is, do your schools in Henry County have an IB program or an AP program? And we don't want them to say that we don't have either. So we want it to be that we have a strong, thriving AP program. So this is our first step to getting that back to where it was years ago.
Well, I think Dr. DeVault makes a good point, because even if the kid does very poorly on it, the student and the parents need to understand that if that's what they're going to do in college, they need to get their act together.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, you're thinking about after next year making it mandatory that they take the tests.
Well, I might add too, we need to make sure our staff encourages them to take the tests.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
We do know.
I say that because
We do.
know some experiences where, well, you don't have to worry about taking it. So,
I second your sentiment there.
Yeah, I think they
I
need to know.
speak from experience.
And I have to say that that's what I know, and I think many of the people in the room know who I'm talking about, and I've told this story before. I was in AP history in high school, and I had strep throat. And the day before the exam, I had strep throat and I was at home. And my AP history teacher, Martha Williams, called and said, "You prepared for this test all year? You will not miss this test." I said, "My fever is 104. I can't stand up." She said, "You will come." And I don't know if Dr. DeVault did it or who did it, but I had a special little area in the library by myself because I had such a high fever. But I made a qualifying score on that test because
We knew you were going to have a good score. That's why.
Exactly right.
But that was the whole mentality of the whole school pressured, but no, we knew we were prepared, and it was the intent that you would take the test because you are prepared. So we want our teachers and our administrators to say that you're prepared, you need to take the test, it's rigorous, it's good for you. It'll prepare you for college. So we want to go back to that.
So what action do you need the board to take today? We could make a motion strongly encouraging next year and mandatory after that.
We just wanted you all to know, because we
Okay.
did go talk, Mrs. Milner and Mrs. Durham went out and spoke, like she said, to the principals, the guidance counselors, and the teachers of this is our expectation when we say that a child is in an APDE class. Our expectation is rigor and relevance.
Just information for you today.
And the economic development is a very important aspect because we're hoping to get some more good news in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the consent agenda. It's right lengthy. Does anybody have any particular questions on the consent agenda?
I don't know about everyone else. I get overwhelmed sometime by these anachronisms or whatever they're called. Tell me what IXL stands for.
Oh my, now that you said it, I know it's math and language arts. It's a computer program that students have been doing forever where they can log on and a teacher can have you working on fractions and I can be working on multiplication and working on where we're our readiness level. And then it tells me, the computer actually tells me if I'm right or wrong, and it tells me why I was wrong, and it gives me questions that help me with a skill that I'm weak in. So all our teachers have that for math and language arts in the elementary and middle school. It's ELA, the English language arts is for first grade through 11th grade, and the math is for K-12. And they can do it at home, they can do it at night, weekends.
Sounds like we need to keep doing it.
Yeah, and yeah, it's the teachers love that tool.
Yeah, it is. It's good. They do. A lot of school districts use it too, and give the kids an opportunity to get a lot of practice work in. Yeah. Are you finished up? I just have one. Blackboard Inc. Is that Blackboard Connect? Is that different? Is this the platform that we use to communicate?
No, sir.
It's not.
Blackboard is our webpage. That's the platform that we use that is ADA compliant to develop our website.
Oh, okay. It's not.
Are you talking about the Power School Suite, maybe even some of those, let's see.
Yes, sir. Power School Suite. Power School bought out Talent Ed, which is what we used in HR.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that is on one fact sheet this year. But that is everything we've been purchasing all along. Our student information system, our learning management system, but also recruit and hire that we use to post jobs. So that's kind of a combination of those two now that it has been bought out by Power School. So that's why it looked so large. But those are all the things we've been using every year.
Like something you knew is IA, Interactive Achievement, is now called Power School,
Assessment analytics.
and so that's part of that suite.
Other questions on the consent agenda?
Move for approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Dr. DeVault, seconded by Mr. Martin to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion is unanimous with 2 members absent. Okay, we move on to the action agenda. We have the Carl Perkins Grant, Mrs. Durham.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We've been working recently with the Career Academy, Mr. Mentor, Mr. Rodriguez, the CT Advisory Committee, and we've developed our Perkins 4 grant. We're bringing that to, Perkins 5, I'm sorry, it's 5 now, grant to you this morning for approval. The Perkins 5 grant is called the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act this year. It is a little different. It was a new reauthorization was signed into law July 2018. It reauthorized all that Carl D. Perkins Career Technical Education Act, and once again, it did rename it to the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act. Can you say all that together? It does authorize Perkins 5 grant. We used to be called Perkins 4, and it is effective until 2023. The same premises are there. Perkins is used to support and to increase the focus on academic achievement of our career and technical education students. It also helps to create a connection between that secondary and post-secondary options for students. And of course, it helps us to improve our state and local accountability for those kids in the career and technical education fields. It directly aligns with our Inspire 2025. All of our, you'll see when we go through the presentation this morning, all the goals are there. You'll see how Perkins helps support instruction and supports our professionals. It supports technology and environment and family and community engagement. All those things are present in Perkins 5 for us. We do not have the actual allocation yet. We are given the grant and asked to go ahead and budget based on this year's allocation. So last year we received $173,000 and some change. So we will, the budget you see here today is based on last year's allocation. It never fails. As soon as I present it to you every year, I can go back to my office and I can tell you within a couple of days I'm going to get the actual allocation. And it's usually about right around that amount. Once again, all the items you're going to see today are 100% grant funded, so no out-of-pocket expenses for us. They're all reimbursable with this grant. It does support all these areas that we have here in Henry County. You can see all the clusters in the program areas that we support and offer our students. We have something in every one of these areas here, which is awesome that we can offer these opportunities for our students. One of the things that we are required to do for Perkins is to set aside some funding for professional development, which is good because that allows our teachers to attend conferences and workshops to get those updates for state board and curriculum updates, and to give them some resources and strategies to help their students to earn industry credentials. So in the grant, you'll see we set aside $7,850 to help with our professional development for our faculty and staff. Perkins also requires us to use funding to help special population students, which is really good because we can help pay for them for travel expenses if necessary for state and national competitions. We can only pay for those students who are deemed special populations. And these are the students who are considered special populations under this act. Students who are special needs, like have an IEP or a 504, if they're economically disadvantaged, if they live at home with a parent who's out of the workforce, if they're identified as non-traditional, if they are an EL student, they're in homeless or foster care. This one's a new one they added with the new act. We can support students who live with a parent who's a member of the armed forces, but that parent has to be on active duty. we can pay for those students. And we can also pay for any student who is a single parent themselves. Like, even if they're pregnant at that time, we can pay for students who might be single fathers or mothers. The newest one is the one about the armed forces. That's a pretty new one there. But we can pay for these students to travel and compete and go to the competitions with our CT programming. We also pay for translators and interpreters using Perkins 5. So we want to make sure that's one of the stipulations for Perkins, that we make sure that all students have equitable access to CTE programs for all students, and we do this by providing translators and interpreters. We translate the program of studies, we translate brochures, and provide those things for in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking students. We also work with Mr. Rodriguez to arrange interpreters to be available at the high school for the Career Expo nights and meetings with parents and other events when we might need them. And we use the funding in Perkins to pay for those those translators and interpretations. We also use Perkins to upgrade and replace some technology. Next year, we've been working with Mrs. Atkins in her department. We're going to replace 100 laptops and 4 carts for our Horton Ag classes, both at Magna Vista and Bassett. We also upgrade software purchases for our teachers. These are software programs that our teachers use actually in class. So we have to renew those subscriptions each year, and Perkins will allow us to use that money for that. So we got some healthcare software, some business software, some software for the agriculture classes, and some of our coding classes in the middle school. So just basic software updates and purchases. Our cosmetology, we have a great cosmetology teacher who's really working to beef up that program out there at the Career Academy, and she has requested some things to help with her program. She needs some licensing program. It's called Milady Online. It's some resources that she needs for her students and for her instruction, and she needed an updated set of textbooks and extra material, so we're going to budget to provide her what she needs as she's beefing up that program. I hope you all had a chance to go out there and see it. We always serve our teachers and ask them what do they need for equipment, because Perkins can be used to pay for upgrades of equipment and replacement of equipment. So we have asked all of our teachers who teach CTE, and the number one thing that comes in, Mr. Bird's class, he's asking for a CNC metal cutting machine. So we're going to try to budget that and get that for him as we expand that program for him out there. We've got some things that the greenhouse at FC needs, because we're still trying to grow that program out there as well. The agricultural program, once again, at Career Academy, we're expanding that. We've had a couple teachers who need a replacement of some printers, and we always support our robotics classes at the middle school and upgrade those each year. And then our culinary arts, they said we need some new cooking utensils and bowls and things like that, so we're upgrading some of the equipment for them. So just a reminder that Perkins does provide the latest instructional resource and equipment for our teachers. It does provide professional development for our teachers. It helps fund those special populations. And we are estimating around $173,000 for Perkins 5. So it is recommended that the board approve the Perkins 5 grant as I presented, and then for the CTE local plan and budget application for expenditures listed in the 2019-2020 budget for career and technical education. Any questions?
I do want to point out and reiterate what Ms. Durham said about this federal grant and how we're told to use last year's number, and as soon as she goes back to her office, she'll probably get this year's number. Well, this is the one grant. The rest of them are due, all the title grants are due in June, by June 30th, so you have to hear those at the June meeting or before. This grant is the only one that's due in April, so the DOE has to have it by April 30th, so you have to approve it at this April meeting. So it is the timing is bad, but
it has been already presented and approved by the CTE Advisory Committee, and Patrick Henry Community College's Perkins representative, they approved it as well.
Well, it's a grant, so I don't have a problem motion to approve it, but I got a question after we approve it, because, you know.
Sure.
So I move that we approve the grant.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gravely, seconded by Mr. Ocker to approve the grant. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0.
All right, now my question. As far as, I know you indicated that the teachers will make a request for this money. Do we have a process, a system in place to budget money towards?
We've been very fortunate on what they've asked for. We do look at priority, we do look at, Mr. Rodriguez and Mr. Mentor and I will sit down and look at the needs. We have to do a needs assessment and complete before we do the grant to analyze where are we areas that we are weak in, that we might need to add some extra support for, and so that's what we'll do. We also look at growing programs and new programs. For instance, like Mr. Bird's program, we're really trying to grow that program, so we know we've got to put a little more there this year. And we do, I don't just sit down and make the decision, I do make the decision with a group of people, and we present it to the CTE committee, the advisory board too. But yes, there is a vetting process that we do go through. And we also have to make sure that what they are requesting is reimbursable and it's on the equipment list. And so we go through those things. And we never, I'll say this, we never have enough money to send kids where we want to send kids.
So that money's so limited.
Yes, that money is so limited, and it's got so many strings attached to it as to who I can pay for.
You couldn't pay for
using
any
the
of us
grant.
on a trip
Yeah.
because we didn't meet those categories.
So we have to look at that. We have to look at where are the special population students, who's going, what groups are asking. So we have to sit down and complete that needs assessment and really go through that data. You're welcome to join us and look at any of that if you would like. That's a great question. We explain that to our teachers too.
Yeah.
They understand.
And I'll just say Mr. Milner would be proud of your comment about
Absolutely.
100% reimbursable and all.
He
Yeah,
trains you
grant
well.
money, hey, can't go wrong with that.
Other questions or comments? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Boone with approval of student code of conduct.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I've reviewed recent state legislation and the school division's Code of Student Conduct. The proposed revisions to the Code of Student Conduct reflected updates to compulsory attendance and attendance procedures. As you remember, we've changed the truancy procedures that we're using. Once a student misses 5 days, the principals have a meeting with the parent. Once they miss 2 additional days after that, the principals have an additional meeting, whether that's over the telephone or in person. Once they miss more days after that, the principal will refer them to me. I go out to the school and I meet with the parent and the principal, and if it's a secondary student, the student as well. I will say with those procedures, I've seen the attendance for those students improve because once you have a discussion with the parents about possibility of going to court, it seems for the meetings I've had, it's really helped to improve for the chronically absent students for those situations. The information was brought for the Student Code of Conduct to the first reading at the March board meeting. Feedback from all stakeholders was incorporated for the first reading of the Student Code of Conduct. And from the first reading, there have been no revisions since the last board meeting. At this time, I'm recommending to the board for approval of the 2019-2020 Code of Student Conduct.
Questions, comments?
I move for approval of the Code of Conduct as has been presented.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Duvall, seconded by Mr. Gravely to approve. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you, Dr. Boone. Next, we have Mr. Scott.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bids were solicited for partial roof replacement on certain specific areas at Bassett High School. Now, we looked at the worst areas that we had that were giving us problems at Bassett High School and created this bid package. Of the 5 contractors that attended the pre-bid meeting, 3 provided responses, and of those 3, AAR of Kernersville, North Carolina provided the lowest base bid, which was $117,500. This bid included 4 additive alternates covering areas with the greatest need, as I mentioned, And creating a bid like this gives us a lot of flexibility to look at with our budget and how much airspace we can get accomplished. So the good news out of this is the total with all the additive alternates and the base bid was under our estimated budget amount, and it came in at $667,600, again, for these specific areas. And it's recommended that the bid be awarded to AAR of Collinsville, North Carolina, in the amount of $667,600, and accepting the base bid and all the alternates altogether. This would be a roof replacement and be matching all the other school roofs that we've put on as well. That particular type of material, the sloped insulation, everything that goes with that.
Okay, could you explain the warranty that goes with that, please?
Yes, sir. All EPDM warranties come with a 20-year manufacturer warranty. And then we always include in our bid a 2-year workmanship warranty from the contractor. So, and this warranty matches all the other roofs that we've put on in the past as well as far as the manufacturer goes.
And all of our recent roof replacements we haven't had any problems at all?
That's correct, yes, sir. Minimal issues from time to time. Of course, it depends on our exciting weather we've had this past year, the taxing things too.
Well, this is certainly good news. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You know, you mentioned problems with the same company. Have we used this company before?
I personally, we have not used this company before here in the bids that I've been involved in since my role. The company that we've used in the past did not bid on this project. They've gone through some changes and stuff on it. But however, our architect and engineering firm that we use for design of this has had experiences with this group, and they're a good reputable company.
Approximately, how much is this partial roof replacement with all alternates going to handle?
As far as the square footage goes?
Yes, and, you know, maybe percentage of school roof replacement.
Well, let me ask you this, with Mr. Strader's permission, I actually have a diagram and floor plan that's highlighted, and I can give copies for you guys to pass around and let you kind of take a look at the areas that we're concentrating on. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
So the 6.
And while we're waiting, it surely is good news. This came in way below estimates. That's kind of information that we need to talk about.
If you could just take one and pass it around. One diagram shows you the square footage broken out. It's kind of hard to read because it's so small. And then the other one is actual the room areas and locations. That's good. Notice the gym, dining areas, some classrooms in the back, and then the bingo tech area. These are the areas that we've seen the highest concentration of roof issues, and of course involve students on a regular basis. So that's why we picked those areas to capture first.
As you mentioned, this is the scope of the project. This is about all we could have got done during the summer before school starts.
That's correct, yes, sir. With a roof of the size of Bassett High School, this will be a great start for us. It's a big project, and actually our substantial completion for this, if you approve it, is somewhere towards the end of August with this amount of work on it. So we'll be pushing them pretty hard during the summertime, but we'll be ready since we're getting an early start on it so that they can start the very next day after students are out.
So the 667 is covering these highlighted areas here, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
In terms of all of those stages we had for doing the Bassett roof, where does this put us in line? Does this
You
Does
may
it-
be,
You know, we had stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and all of that.
right, that's something a little bit separate. Those stages that we created back then were renovations for the heating, air conditioning, lighting, and ceiling upgrades. Right, so this is new for us, so as far as roofing
Okay.
goes. Yes, sir.
So are there other areas of the roof that will still need to be done at some point?
Yes, sir, the rest of it. At
The
some
rest
point in
of it.
time, yes, sir. The benefit of this is that we've got different elevations, as we've mentioned in the past, and so this allows us to capture those. What you don't want to do, if it's a single elevation of the roof, it's hard to seam an old with a new without having potential problems. So we try to capture everything we can on that same elevation. But the rest of the roof is exactly the same as far as the coating, which the coating was put in place about 10 years ago to help prolong not having to install a roof 10 years ago.
So,
Well, then I'll make a motion to adopt your recommendation that we award the bid.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, seconded by Dr. DeVault to go proceed. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion's 5-0. And you have another one, Mr. Scott.
Yes, sir. Bids were solicited to provide and install classroom security window coverings at both of our high schools, both of our middle schools, Drury Mason and Meadowview Elementary. Now, this portion, the reason we selected those schools, the other schools involved were accomplished through the school security equipment grant. This particular one would be accomplished thanks to working with Ms. Durham and her team through the Title IV grant. And so that's why these particular sites were selected. And the purpose of security window coverings is a continued effort on improving our safety procedures in our schools. It's a quick way to cover the classroom windows in the event of an incident that takes place. So of the 3 firms that responded, Lux Out Products of Richmond, Virginia, provided the lowest bid of $30,442. And you see a bid summary included there. We had them bid it with us installing and with them installing, and came in under our budgeted estimate amount with them installing it as well. So it's recommended that the bid be awarded to Lux Out Products of Richmond, Virginia, in the amount of $30,442. And again, important to note to me is that the Title IV grant is covering this, and it's working with Ms. Durham and her team has been excellent this year, helping us cover a lot of safety, security, and health and wellness portions of it as well.
Why was this not included in the new school when we built it?
Well, this is something extra with it. Again, just as this is would have been added cost to that particular construction as well. But, you know, until we get the windows in place, it's really better to do it at a later date.
And what is this actually covers the windows
It
in
does,
case
yes,
of
sir.
emergency?
If you get a chance, you're visiting maybe an elementary school at this point in time, minus the ones we've listed, look on the back of a classroom door. It's as, I guess I can just divulge that information on it. It's a window covering. Basically, it just rolls up behind the classroom window, and it has one Velcro strap. So in the event of an incident that takes place in the school, you know, a lot of times if you've been through our procedures, we find ways to cover those windows in a quick manner. This is one Velcro strap. You pull, the covering drops down and covers out the window. So where it helps us a lot is your fine motor skills, not having to worry about something in the event of an incident taking place.
Before that, they were like grabbing a piece of paper and some tape and taping it over the windows, or a piece of bulletin board paper and trying to cover big windows so no one can see in. So this is just fast and quick.
So these are the windows and the doors that enter the classroom?
That's correct, yes, sir. The big difference would be at Meadowview, if you remember correctly, we have those side panels at the doors as well, and they'll cover those as well. So we'll have 2 in those classrooms. All the rest of them have classroom doors, cafeteria doors, some of the areas that students will be.
Just as a sidebar, I was watching yesterday, I guess it was on the news, but anyway, it was a technology showcase where kids were competing and inventing various school safety tools, and a group of kids came up with a similar, where you can just drop it. It covers the whole door where you can't see into the classroom, and I think their project ended up winning this competition and everything, So I say that just to say that, and I'll report out later. I was at the conference, and a lot of emphasis is on school safety across this country and putting tools in our schools to assure the public that we're doing everything we possibly can to protect these kids, So just as a sidebar.
Other questions?
Move for approval of this request as presented.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Duval, seconded by Mr. Martin to approve. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Okay, we move on to the superintendent's highlights.
Yes, sir, as always, we have our samples from each school that Ms. Atkins will go ahead and play, and any other things I can talk about.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Strayer?
Well, I hold my comments until we get to board matters. Make the connection.
Okay, we have board matters next. I think I'm going to go first and get ahead of Mr. Gravely. I attended the county budget presentation along with Mr. David Scott and Dr. Boone the other day. The board is recommending, the Board of Supervisors, that they fund most of what we asked for. If you look at the total county budget, everybody had to make a little sacrifice. Nobody got everything that they wanted. I thought there was a silver lining. Mr. Hall talked about the huge capital expenditure of the Bassett High School roof, and he said that he would consider alternative funding for the Bassett roof several months from now, once the financing for the jail is all in place. He said doing it piecemeal costs more money, and so this could help us. It's a possibility we could get a literary loan or some other alternative funding. So I thought that was a positive thing. Mr. Walker, we'll go across. Any comments?
Oh, I want to be last today.
Okay.
We all want to be last today.
What?
We all want to be last today.
Well, he caught me off guard when he said that.
I just have a question maybe for personnel. Recent legislation, I think, is requiring that school counselors spend approximately 80% of their time dealing with actually counseling as opposed to record keeping and testing and all of the other things that we have seemed to pass on to counselors. Are we going to be able with our staffs in place to meet that?
We are right now, and I was actually looking for, we've already worked out, based on the numbers, the ratio has changed. The governor did present an original ratio of like 300 to 1 in elementary, 325 to 1 in middle, and 375 to 1 in high school. That was changed by the General Assembly. So we did build our numbers based on the General Assembly. They were a little higher and in reverse order. They had a smaller ratio in high school rather than the elementary school. So at this point, we are okay, because where the ratio that General Assembly passed would require us to have 3 guidance counselors, we actually have 4 in the high school, and it requires us to have 2 in the middle. We have 3. And so some of our elementary schools are so small, they only need like a 50% of a guidance counselor. And we have always, as a school board, said that we feel that's necessary to have a whole guidance counselor in elementary school. So with our numbers being like that, we will be able to reach the ratio of 80% counseling. We have talked to our principals in the principals meeting about they may have to look at, do they need to have an assistant principal, take on some of the duties? Because when you're registering kids, you might say that's not counseling, but when you're registering a child for classes and what programs they want to be in, like Mr. Mentor's program, that is counseling, because you're talking about what they want to do with their life. So right now we'll be okay. However, you all know that the governor has put back out that he wants to go back with his original numbers for counselors. And so the General Assembly convenes next week. And so we will find out what those ratios will be, and we'll know those by our May board meeting and be able to make a definite statement as to whether we need to hire. Right now, it would be no one based on the General Assembly's recommendation, but if it changes, we may have to look at some additional hiring and counseling, which we know we already have a concern of not having to backfill the jobs that we have. So, but we will let you know. So right now, it does look very good.
And do we have some way of determining whether that's actually happening?
Well, since that just came out, we have been talking about what we're going to do about that, and with some changes, counseling falls under many different departments. Because of homebound, it's kind of under student services. Because of PBIS, it's under student services, but because of some of the instruction things like the character education and all, it's under instruction. So we're going to have to decide how we're going to monitor that. But we have been talking about that because we know counselors have all said that they feel that thus the name change, they were known as guidance counselors, and this action by the General Assembly changes their names to school counselors, no more being called guidance counselors. So we do plan to have several meetings about that this summer.
I guess since the advent of this high-stakes testing that all schools are involved in now, I've always been concerned and observed that counselors sometimes spend more time dealing with preparing and grading and scheduling and doing all of that testing, and I'm not sure that's real counseling.
No, and you're, like you said, talking about all the things that we know now about the trauma that most of our students have experienced and the problems that we have that lead to safety problems all come from not having enough counseling in the school. So that's why everybody, I think, from every superintendent to every teacher has said that it's a major problem, not having enough counseling time.
Well, maybe the ultimate answer to that is to have a test coordinator in every school, at least at the upper high school.
Right, and with
middle
us
school,
only needing 3.
so that the counselors could actually do counseling.
And we talked about that because when I worked at Bassett High School, that's how that was. There was one person who did test administration and any data items, and the other 3 counselors were allowed to be counselors. So we've talked about changing the structure in the guidance department. We actually, I said, we told principals about the change, so they're aware, and we've talked to them about having some ideas about what they want to do, as we have to make the change. But right now, we're on hold, waiting to see what number it's going to be. So we may indeed have to come back to you and hire someone if the ratios go back to what the governor recommends.
Well,
I was just gonna say, if the principals have that discretion, or could have it, the person doing that job would not actually have to be certified as a counselor.
That's right.
I believe. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to piggyback off that because, you know, I've been having some conversations, and I think Ms. Stray and I had talked about this too. One of the things that, you know, I thought about in particular, I'll just use this year for an example. We have, I know, one excellent counselor retiring and was a test coordinator. All right, so, you know, my suggestion, I had a conversation with about, all right, what if you being retired, just come in during test time and schedule and perform all the testing duties, you know, in the fall when we test, and then, of course, in the spring when we test. And, you know, this person was very receptive to that idea. So, and I know that there are several other people that retired that could, on a part-time basis, we could hire possibly to come in just to perform testing, you know, something similar to what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And I think it would cost us, cost us less money than hiring a person all year long, because we only have those certain testing seasons outside of something like MAP, which, you know, we could work around that as well. But I think trying to take that workload off our counselors would be a big move, and they could spend more time with the other pieces.
Right. And definitely, you know, some of the larger schools, then that's when they have assistant principals, and they may need to take some of those duties on, in like small larger elementary schools, where you don't have as many counselors. But so back to those proposed ratios, the governor, like you said, he said elementary 300 to 1, middle school 325 to 1, high school 375 to 1. The General Assembly said elementary 455 to 1, middle school 370 to 1, and high school 325 to 1. So right now, there's waiting to see which one of those is approved.
Okay. Mr. Martin.
I think most of everyone here is aware that the issue that got me on the school board initially was the Bassett roof and its need for replacement. And I agree with Mr. Zaire that I'm glad to hear that the county is willing to look into the possibility, as I've said for a while, to pursue alternative funding for these massive capital improvement projects that we have. We have put off some of these needs for quite a while. We have made it work with what we have, and I want to thank Mr. Scott for his work on this, and Mrs. Strayer and Mr. Scott and the work on the budget. And you know, I'm very grateful for the staff we have and what we've got, and hopefully we will get these issues resolved as soon as possible for them.
Go ahead, I got a feeling you're not done yet, Mr. Gramley. Then we'll come back and let Mr. Archer go
Let
on.
Mr. Archer, well, mine is going to take about 2 hours.
Well,
Now, I just want to note that to the board, I did have an opportunity to go to the National School Board Conference my first, of course, and I was just in awe of how many people actually attend these type of events, you know. I go back to years when I was a basketball coach. I used to go to all of these camps and listen to professional college coaches talk about what they do in their programs. And it's just so overwhelming in that, you know, you can't do everything, you know. So I would always try to find little nuggets and figure out, are we aligned with what's going on in different places across the country, across the state, et cetera. I say all that to say this, you know, listening to a number of speakers talk about what's going on in their school districts, and this is all states were represented, okay? I found that we are closely aligned with what's going on across this country. Now, are there areas for improvement? Yes. You know, some of the common trends that we talk about, for an example, first and foremost, school safety, providing different tools to ensure the community that we are taking every necessary step to make sure our kids are safe. I got a couple of things I'll share with you guys later on that blew me away that I think we might need to look at, you know. The other piece is equity. What are we doing to make sure we're providing equity for all our students? And now I go back to your presentation. Some of the things that I saw in your presentation were similar to what I saw there. I mean, what's going on in our schools, you know. So I was very pleased to sit and listen to people out in Denver, Colorado, and I had conversations with a lady from Denver and one from California, and they telling me what's going on in their schools. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we're not bad. We aren't bad, you know. I guess the big thing, we have our STEM programs, but I guess we need to start looking at STEAM. You know, just add an A in there now, but you know, we'll get there. We'll get there. But in essence, we're not off the beaten path. You know, we're heading in the right direction. I'll talk with Ms. Strail later on, and we got some things I'd like to share with her, and maybe at some point we can bring it back to the board and look at some other things we might be able to implement. But we're on the right track, folks. You're doing a great job. Doing a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Gravely. All right, Mr. Archer.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that the camp out at Stanleyton, Sandville was great. It was a lot of fun. The hot dogs are good too. Secondly, AP, I'm loving it. It's needed desperately to get back on track, and I think it's going to work. There is an article that I gave to Ms. Strayer that was in the school board journal or whatever that we get.
I think it's the American School Board Journal, you're right.
Okay. There was an article in there about changes to the AP testing, so that might be something that y'all need to look at because I think there's penalties involved and things of that sort, and I believe the cost has risen too. So, but I think the AP program, I'm 100% for it. The last thing is, I think we as a school board need to encourage the Board of Supervisors to go after delinquent taxes so that we can have that extra money that we can build in to capital improvements and so forth. I can assure you that if we owe taxes to the state of Virginia, they're going to come and get us. And if we especially owe taxes to the IRS, they can garnish your wages, they can do lots of things. And I really think that it's time that we get serious about collecting these delinquent taxes. And I hope that there are no, school people that are on that list. But I really think if we do that, then we can have a dialogue with the Board of Supervisors in that they would provide us some extra capital for capital improvements. Because as we've talked about this morning, basically what we're doing is we're Band-Aiding repairs on our schools. And after a while, those Band-Aids don't keep the elastic. They start to shrivel up. So that's all I have, Mr. Zaire.
Okay, Mr. Ocker. Reminder of dates, the public hearing on the school budget and the overall county budget is April the 15th at 7 o'clock. Some of you board members might want to attend that. And there's a whole bunch, the retirement dinner is April the 17th at Chatmoss. And there's some other ones on there the board can look at. At this time, we need a motion to go into closed session on section 2.2-3711A, 1, 2, and 7, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ocker, seconded by Dr. DeVault to go into closed session on those three codes. All in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0. We will meet upstairs.